Fridays at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. Get to talk about 49ers free agency. They continue to make moves. These are not moves that maybe everyone will get really excited about, but they are moves nonetheless, and they are solid moves that the San Francisco 49ers continue to make to build out their roster, fill out some holes. But now they're starting to work on depth. Potentially got a couple of starters here or there. But for the most part, the 49ers have been about making sure that they have the deepest possible roster that they can get. And how's it going, everybody? How about them Niners in the house? Kylie in the house as well. How's it going, everybody? Hope you guys are doing good. Lou, what's up? And we'll get to your restructure question that I seen that you left on one of the videos. I'll make sure to get in all that today. Really excited about this stream because the 49ers continue to make some moves that maybe might fly under the radar, but could pay some big dividends in the future. And I think one of the biggest ones, of course, is that they go ahead and they go out and got Clelin Ferrell yesterday. The details of the contract have begun to emerge. He's getting $2.5 million, so very cheap. This is very close to what they did when they brought over Maurice Hurst and Arden Key before the 2021 season. So the 49ers going back to the same thing that's worked before. Get a player that has an extreme amount of ability. I mean, Ferrell was drafted in the top 5. Was he a top 5 player talent-wise? No. He was, to me, a second-round pick. I had a second-round grade on him, but Arden Key was a guy who was a second-round grade guy, and look at what he did with the 49ers, 6.5 sacks. So there's a lot of ability here with Ferrell, where Ferrell's a little bit different than Arden Key. Arden Key was an edge guy that the 49ers were going to play inside, where Ferrell is probably not as athletic, not able to bend as good as Key, so he's a little bit of a different player. But Ferrell's contract is exactly what the doctor ordered, and the way the 49ers use Charles Omenihu, Ferrell is a talented version of that, a guy that can play inside and outside, can set the edge against the run. Those are all good things. So here's the deal. Ferrell's 1-year deal is $2.5 million, with $1.82 million of that guaranteed. So he's going to be on this roster more than likely. Of course, last year, Nate Sudfeld got $2 million guaranteed, and then he hit the road and headed elsewhere. And then they gave him $660,000 signing bonus. He's going to earn a $1.16 million base salary and a $40,000 per game active roster bonus. So it's very good for the 49ers. It's a nice, cheap deal, but they get a guy that has the ability to set the edge in the run. Does it mean that Ferrell's going to be a starter? No. Does it mean he's going to be a solid depth rotational piece? Yes. And at worst, or at best maybe, a rotational with Drake Jackson where he plays early downs. Jackson then comes in on obvious pass downs and pass rushes, because I still have a concern about Ferrell about Drake Jackson on early down. So those are all things that are going to play out for sure. And what's up, Paul? How's it going? Hope you're having a good one as well. How about says, chilling like a villain with a gold tooth fillin', bringing those rhymes. And I don't know if everyone noticed, but I'm wearing my Sam Darnold jersey today. So just like that, I got a Sam Darnold jersey, which is nice. Sure, everyone's excited about Sam Darnold's official press conference today. But Jay Elliott asked, one big move left, Ant? Question marks. I think there's always the potential of a move left because of the free agents that are still available. Now, the 49ers, of course, this is one thing Lou was talking about in the comments, was about the 49ers restructuring deal. So they restructured Charvarius Ward early in the process and freed up close to $10 million. They used that money to bring in guys that they needed to bring in and to bring back Jake Brendel. Then they renegotiated a contract with Fred Warner and were able to free up close to $10 million again. Now they have used a little bit of that money to sign players like Clelin Ferrell, Isaiah Oliver, who we'll talk about in a minute, but also bringing back T.Y. McGill, those guys. Now, once we know what the top 51 contracts are, every time they sign a player and their money goes underneath that amount, they will not count against the salary cap. So just because they sign a player doesn't mean it eats up salary cap. I believe the 49ers now have close to 59 players on the roster, which means they sign a player under the top 51, he will not count. This is where you're going to start seeing those depths. That's why you see Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles come back, and also T.Y McGill. They can fit under that, have no salary cap implications, but you get them for depth reasons. They can help you on special teams. They can help you in depth and rotation, but don't hurt you salary cap wise. So once they got past that number, it started getting a lot more clear. So could they use it, still do a big move? Yes. Do they still have money that they can free up? Yes. Christian McCaffrey, potentially, they could free up money there if they convert his money to a signing bonus and then spread it out. They could do the same things with Eric Armstead and Trent Williams. Also with George Kittle. I think they would like to avoid that if possible. Not McCaffrey, the other three especially, because Trent Williams is getting older. He had talked about retirement. You don't want dead money for multiple years at the end of his contract that you're going to have to account for. Same with Armstead. He's getting to the point now where his money is pretty ridiculous, but if they had to do it, they would. It all depends on how much they want to go in. So I think that's part of it. Lou says Mayock was real high on him. They had to be something there. He's definitely a good, solid player. It was a reach for top 5. It wasn't a reach as far as a solid, good player. 10 sacks in 4 seasons is not terrible. I think it could go up. Arden Key, 3 sacks in 3 seasons for the Raiders. Then he comes over and plays for Chris Kasarik and absolutely lights it up. Now he's 2 contracts up, making big money. And I think that's exactly what Clelin Ferrell is trying to do here. And it could happen. Chris Kasarik is one of those guys. He's about it. He says, hey, come here. I will coach you up. You'll fit in my system and you'll go out and make money. And I'm not saying that's like a myth of what I think he said. That's what he actually said. So that's what he's about. Brad says, yes, Ant only missed a few minutes and we'll be here for the whole time. Awesome. Brad says, if Robbie Gould resigns during the stream, I'm done. Well, if he resigns during the stream, I want to know because I want to get all into that. And there has been a little bit of movement around the NFL. Nothing really big with the 49ers today, more depth moves. But yeah. Lou says, is there any tier 2 tackles left you would like? Are we talking about, if we're talking about offensive tackles, to me, the San Francisco 49ers could potentially bring in somebody to fit that bill. So let's go ahead and let's look at the tackle market real quick and just see who's available. There hasn't been a lot of movement on that. I thought Orlando Brown's deal that he got yesterday, I felt like he took less because he wants to play left tackle. But I mean, the thing is, the 49ers are looking for something different. Orlando Brown, he was a guy that was definitely wanting to play left tackle. It was something that was important to him. So let's see. We got Taylor Lewan, who's still available, but he's had all kinds of injury problems. He's over the age of 30 and has already said he doesn't really want to play right tackle. So I think I would love to have Taylor Lewan. I don't think that's an actual possibility. George Fant, what's his number look like? He's reached 30 years old, but he played in the system for the New York Football Jets. So what was his average potential salary? $3.3 million. So George Fant could be a possibility, a guy that's used to the NFC West as a guy that could come in and compete. It's all about how much they're going to cost. And if they're just that happy overall, they could go, with Colton McKivitz, they could stay there. So let's see who else. There are guys. So I'm looking at this list right now. Billy Turner's another guy I'm not against potentially adding if the price is right to be able to compete. But overall, the names are guys that don't exactly trip your trigger as it would be. So to me, there's some guys that the 49ers could potentially go for that fit the system, that they could bring in and compete with Colton McKivitz, and that might be what they ultimately try to do. I think the guys who stand out the most are George Fant and Billy Turner, unless the 49ers could convince Taylor Lewan to switch to the right side. He loves Trent Williams. I don't think that's going to happen, but never say never when it comes to the 49ers, especially with the amount of players that have went out and got it going on. Okay, let's see. How about them Niners? Says Raiders obviously saw something. They really excited them. Sarek likely saw the same thing. Traits and knows how to refine his skills and coach him properly. Some of it too is scheme fit. So the Raiders play a different scheme they have throughout. Even when they drafted Ferrell, when they drafted Arden Key and Maurice Hurst, they played in a different scheme. That's why players are excited to come here and play for Chris Kasarik. Javon Hargrave said today during his press conference that he wanted to come play for Chris Kasarik, and that the style, he thinks he's actually going to be better than he was in Philadelphia, that the coaches there had them watch film of the 49ers and that style of play. So people are starting to mimic and kind of try to get the game and the defensive line play going that direction at which the 49ers do right now. Kasarik's method and his madness are starting to go around the league. Here's the key, though. He is the secret sauce. You guys see him coach, the energy and all of that is so good. So to me, I think this is a great signing for Ferrell. I think they'll get the most out of him. And then next year, to be honest, he'll probably move on and make a lot of plays. And Paul says Ferrell seems like his talents will work good with Wilkes' fire zone defense where the ends drop back. It could. I don't know if his athletic ability fits him out in space. He's not exactly a guy that has that outside linebacker type ability. To me, he's a really close to a 5-tech in a 3-4, a la what Eric Armstead when he came out, or DeForest Buckner when they came out. I don't think he's as athletic as Buckner, but I think that's kind of where he is. And then I Don't Game says, got you another 14 in the building. Just what I needed. It came at just the right time. That's what I love to see. DZ says, I keep hearing Jimmy G failed his physical. Not like it's any of our business, but have you heard this? I have not heard anything about Jimmy failing his physical. So, I mean, I'll keep an ear out and see if I hear anything, but no, I haven't heard that as of now. Brad says, I'm honestly surprised the contract that hasn't been restructured. Which contract was that hasn't been restructured? BV says, Ant, do the 49ers address the O-line with their first pick? They could, and I think this is something that's been coming up, pretty consistently amongst fans. Everyone keeps coming through and asking me about the offensive line position in the draft. I think a lot of people, see that potentially it's something that the Niners need to address in the draft. I think it will be to a point. The 49ers have definitely decided to go with offensive tackles kind of later in the draft as their normal model. Aaron Banks, of course, the outlier, an interior offensive lineman. They've taken one actual interior offensive lineman since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch came in the draft. It was Aaron Banks. They took him in the second round. So to me, I think that the way they've kind of went, those guys that they'd probably be targeting are all probably going to go in the end of the second round to early third round, and that's one of the things I'm worried about. The guys who fit their system are kind of going to go there with Cody Mock, Matthew Bergeron. Those guys are all going to be there. So we'll see. Overall, I know Jalen Duncan will probably go in the third round. Potentially the 49ers could have some interest in him. I'm trying to go over this list a little bit. I've been breaking down some of the offensive linemen. And everyone's high on Blake Freeland. And I told you guys I was going to get into his film, and I got into Blake Freeland film, and I got to watch a lot of the Senior Bowl practice film and got into that. And I'll be honest, he's not a second round talent. I don't think Blake Freeland should go in the second round. I don't think he should go in the third round. I got Blake Freeland at a fourth to fifth round grade from what I saw. I know he graded out very good at the combine with all those tremendous numbers, but I seen a 6'8" guy who was extremely slight for 303 pounds. He was getting moved around. He bends at the waist. There's not a lot of flexibility in his hips, which I thought I was going to see more of because of the athletic ability. To me, there's a ton of development with Blake Freeland. I don't think he's ready to start in year one for sure. So I've kind of started moving off of Freeland as a target for the 49ers as somebody that could come in and make an impact. And I know that's going to go against the grain of what most you hear from 49ers, content creators, but I don't see it. I see the athletic ability. I see the, a lot of the things you would like as far as blocking in the zone scheme, but he's an absolute liability right now as far as pass blocking. He was struggling to get guys who went to the inside. He was bending and reaching on guys going to the outside. They were able to get under him with moves. Yeah, if he gets his long arms on you, he can do some damage, but then I didn't see the strength to be able to anchor consistently. I think you would get players like Nick Bosa or Justin Houston, guys that would get underneath his pads and absolutely put him down. So to me, I've kind of slowed on him. I'm going to continue to watch film, but right now, from what I've seen from Senior Bowl and a couple of games that I've watched, I got him as a 4th-round talent right now. So, I mean, I know that's different, but I think finding offensive tackles right now, BV50 has sort of been a struggle. I know there's some good ones early in the draft. I think I'm just trying to find a spot where the 49ers pick in that into the 3rd round, 4th round, where you're getting a guy. I think if Freeland was there as a guy that you could potentially grab, I'm okay with that. But I think that'd be the highest spot I'd be willing to go up and get him, or I'd be willing to take him. I would no longer be willing to trade up to get him, to be honest. Brad says, honestly, the only 2 losses we had, I really would have liked to have kept Brunskill and Charles Omenihu. Really good depth and rotation pieces for multiple positions. I think what the struggle is with Charles Omenihu is Charles Omenihu got close to $10 million a year. The 49ers were not going to match that. They let Samson Ebukam leave for $9 million a year. So those 2 guys definitely, price themselves out. I liked both of them. But for production, I mean, 4.5 sacks for Omenihu, 5 sacks for Ebukam. That's solid for depth. I mean, that's really, really good as they're part of rotation. But Omenihu played more snaps than Ebukam, had less sacks. I know he had hurries and pressures, and all those things count. They really do. And I like those. But I don't know if that's $10 million worthy with the amount of players and the type of players that were open on free agency. If I'm paying someone $10 million, I want them to be able to get 10 sacks. I want double-digit sack numbers. So to me, they just priced out. With Brunskill, I think he went to the Titans for an opportunity to start. He did not have that here in San Francisco playing guard. With Banks and Burford playing the way they do, I think Brunskill leaving signals the 49ers plan to play Burford at right guard. Lou says, if San Francisco moves up on draft day, what position will they target? I think it's an edge guy. I think if you're moving up, you got to get a lot of bang for your buck. So you need a guy that's going to make an impact on your football team, whether that's this year or next year. You need a guy with elite traits. So I don't think you're going up to get anyone other than an edge rusher, unless one of those offensive tackles that we mentioned, kind of that we're going to fall in that range that was like the end of the second, into the second kind of like area, one of those guys possibly fall, and you're like, okay, now we're going to go up and target one of these guys. I think they would be willing because Colton McKivitz is a solid prospect. I know they had a 3rd round grade on him when he came out, but if you had the opportunity to get one of those guys that are kind of in that area, like a Cody Mock, who's been working with Joe Staley or Matthew Bergeron, I think you go ahead and you do it. So to me, those 2 guys are guys I'm interested in. They're offensive tackles. And these guys have a lot of talent and they fit the scheme. So to me, those are 2 guys that I'd be willing to trade up for if I was going offensive line. But then edgewise, Will McDonald or somebody like that falls to the end of the 2nd round. You jump up and get them. Even though there's a ton of edge rushers I really, really like in this draft. Some of them who aren't as high as others. I just think there's a lot of talent in this draft overall. And I'm kind of excited to see where the 49ers are able to go with it, because I think they can hit on some edge rushers and build some depth for future rotation, where they won't have to spend money on these reclamation projects, that they'll actually have guys, under contract for 2 or 3 years with Chris Kasarik and being able to develop. One of my star players is Zach Harrison out of Ohio State. If he was available, I would be willing to trade up for him sometime in the 3rd round, and I think he will probably go 3rd round minus his pro day, him going crazy. He goes crazy in the pro day and runs a 4.4 at his size, at close to 6'6", and his wingspan of 87 inches. There might not be any opportunity to go ahead and get him. But another guy that I've really started liking in this draft and in this process is Thomas Nkoum. I really like him. He's a really good football player, and I've enjoyed watching his film overall. So Thomas Nkoum is somebody that you could keep an eye on. He's out of Central Michigan. He's a guy that has some good numbers. Is he tall? No, he's 6'2". He's 262. He's got 33.25-inch arms. His 4.6 40. He's still got the speed. He's got a really good first step, but he plays very physical. He plays strong. I like him overall. He's good against the run, but I like his pass rush as well. So Thomas Nkoum is a guy that I'm starting to really, really enjoy when I'm watching film. He's an edge rusher that I like. Brad says CMC's contract. Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't renegotiated that yet, and they're probably waiting. It's one of those things where I've heard people talking about also the deal that has to go with Nick Bosa's extension. And Nick Bosa's extension, they can wait all the way to training camp or close to training camp like they have before, and then that money could go to subsequently pay the rookie contracts if they get it done between minicamp and training camp. So there's going to be some money there. I think they will restructure Christian McCaffrey's contract, especially if they decide to go after one of these edge rushers. It's a plentiful edge rusher market, and right now it's saturated, and the money has already went some places. So there's going to be some guys who potentially fall through the cracks. Could that be a Marcus Golden? He's somebody that had 11 sacks last year, is probably flying under the radar with big names like Jadeveon Clowney and Robert Quinn. And so those types of players, the 49ers usually can let them engage the market, see what their market value is, and then bring them in on pennies on the dollar with a promise that, hey, look at Arden Key, look at Charles Omenihu, look at Samson Ebukam. You come here, you're going to get a nice contract next year, and maybe somebody looks at the market now, reassesses, and says, you know what, I'm going to go get double-digit sacks for the 49ers, and then I'm going to go out elsewhere next year with a less saturated market and get the money. So I think that's still a possibility for McCaffrey's contract to be restructured if they decide to go with a big-time edge. Lou says, do you see any tackle talent in Nick Zakelj? I think Nick Zakelj has talent ability to play tackle. I think one of the things with Nick Zakelj could be, Daniel Brunskill just left. Could Nick Zakelj be the next Daniel Brunskill? Right? All the conversation has been he's a 5-position player. So maybe when they were looking at Nick Zakelj, yes, they saw the ability to be a possible starting center, but in the short term, he could be that Daniel Brunskill replacement. He worked so much last year on playing center and guard. He already had his base in tackle at Fordham. So he could be the Brunskill replacement and a very pivotal, backup player for the 49ers that he could play multiple positions. How about them Niners? Says, I'm looking at Zion Nelson, Blake Freeland, and Antonio Mafi as O-line targets for the 49ers. I think all are solid. I haven't really got into Zion Nelson too much, but he is fitting into that range of Freeland and Mafi, kind of where the 49ers could potentially go out and get them. So that's kind of, yeah. And I don't game says Freeland didn't look good in his one-on-one on his on-field drills during the combine, in my opinion. Yeah, I think so too. I thought that it was the Senior Bowl really tipped it for me. I hadn't got into a Senior Bowl practice film, and when I got into it, I saw a lot of technique flaws. And as a former O-line coach, I was looking at it like, whoa, there's some work that needs to be done here. He's definitely raw. He has the potential. He has the physical traits that you like. I do think being 6'8" at 302 pounds is a little concerning for me. If he's 6'8", I want him to be about 325 pounds. I think that would be a better situation for him. That would show a lot more strength. What's up, Matt? How's it going? Your Detroit Lions are having a really, really good offseason, signing Emmanuel Mosley, making other moves. They've done a pretty good job. I think they're going to be a playoff contender next year. Brad says, what do you think about the re-signing of Ty McGill? I love it because when you're looking at the depth of the 49ers defensive line, yes, the top end is completely solid now. So what they did by adding Javon Hargrave, they put him next to Eric Armstead, and they have a unique ability to be able to pressure them from both interior spots. They can both play 0 tech, 1 tech, 3 tech. You can move them any which way. So depending on strength of the offense that they're playing, they can move those guys around, which can dictate offensive blocking, and they can also do things to break those offensive blocks. So to me, it's a solid move. And then when you start looking at the depth, they brought back Kevin Givens. That was great. He's a penetrator. They brought back T.Y McGill, who was not just a penetrator, but played pretty good against the run. They have a young guy, Kalia Davis, that now they have a lot of depth with and hope for. So to me, it was good. And then you have Javon Kinlaw. And I think what people have to do now is adjust their thought process on what Kinlaw is. They wanted Kinlaw to be what Hargraves is going to be for this defense. He's no longer considered that. What he is now is considered the Hassan Ridgeway. So they brought Ridgeway in last year. He was going to be a two-down run stopper. Every once in a while, he was going to get a sack. Those were what they were expecting from him. He went out to the Houston Texans and got $4 million. The 49ers are expecting that to be Kinlaw, and he's going to make $4.9 million. So not a big difference between the two. I would just say that I think Kinlaw actually has a little bit more pass rushing ability than Hassan Ridgeway. So just adjusting our mindset now on who the player is, I think will help us with his role that he's going to be engaged in this season. BV says, Ant, which player do you think the 49ers is the biggest loss? When it comes to the biggest loss so far, I think when I was looking at it, I think Emmanuel Mosley made it feel like the biggest loss because of the secondary. Now, they went out and got Isaiah Oliver. It looks like they've definitely figured out that Deommodore Lenoir is going to start at the outside corner spot. Oliver being one of the best against the run in the NFL, being good again in run fits, playing in the nickel is very important. It's like the third linebacker in nickel situation, so they have to be really good. He's big and physical the way Jimmy Ward was. I think that's the replacement. But I liked Emmanuel Mosley's ability on the outside. I thought that was a big loss for the 49ers. They weren't willing to pay $6 million. If the 49ers get an edge rusher that is big time to go with Hargrave, they will take the pressure off the secondary. Their number one guy, Charvarius Ward, they brought back the safety room. It's all good to go. So to me, it's Mosley right now. Even though Mike McGlinchey was a huge need, I don't think there's a giant drop off between him and McKivitz yet. I want to see that. But last year when I saw McKivitz play, I thought he did a pretty good job. Brad says, and oh yeah, it isn't this heavy and deep on edge rushers. This draft is heavy on edge rushers. Edge rushers is one of the best ones. So I think tight end is the best of all of them in this draft. And then after that, I think it's edge rushers. How about them? Says, and do you think we have a shot at drafting Cody Mock? Not unless we trade up. You're going to have to trade up. Could be somewhere at the mid to end of the second round. I mean, if he made it to the third round, you would think the 49ers would be all over that, packaging picks to be able to go up and get him, his versatility to play guard and tackle, the fact he's working with Joe Staley. I know the 49ers trust Joe Staley. Shoot, they want him to be one of the offensive line coaches. So to me, that would be a bang-up decision for the 49ers, but they would have to invest capital to do it. What's up, Trickster? How's it going? I hope you're having a good one. Beavis says, Ant, which player do you think the 49ers... Oh, I got through that one. Sorry, guys. My thing is moving on me. Stevo says, Jimmy's presser was canceled, and he hasn't signed yet. Interesting. I wasn't aware of that, Stevo, so news coming through. Paul says, Patient said a dresser could get us a cheaper one. Yeah, I mean, an edge rusher. So Patient on the edge rusher could get us a cheaper one. I think it is, and I think because the market is the way it is, with the saturation of multiple really good pass rushers, you wait for some things to fall out. So we've seen, a couple of guys go early, and then we've seen guys kind of in the middle of the road get their numbers, but the big guys, I think, were expecting more and didn't get it. So I think that's something to remember. How about them Niners? Ant, what do you think of Jason Poe starter potential? So with Poe, it was fun watching him at training camp last year because you can definitely see Poe and the difference between him and everyone else. So he's basically my size. He's 6'1", a little over 300 pounds. Like he's my size. So I got to see what I would look like standing amongst those behemoths. So he definitely doesn't have the side. Now his athletic ability is on display. Those types of things he can do well. He plays good with leverage. He's definitely always able to get under defenders, which is huge. I think it is an interesting prospect, the fact that they were so high on him, but I haven't got to see him since he did training camp last year. We saw him a little bit in the preseason. He did not play during the regular season because he was on, the practice squad. So I don't know if Poe is a starter or not. From the amount I saw him improve, I would think potentially he could work that way. I don't know if this is the year, but I do think he has some potential there, and the 49ers are not going to give up on him. I think they like him overall. So to me, he's definitely somebody that fits into the 49ers plans, but at what point does he come in and actually start making an impact? Right, so our D tackles are set. Hargrave, Armstead, McGill, Kinlaw, and Davis. But when they got 3 edge guys, I think that's the thing. We have right now edge rise. We have Nick Bosa, Drake Jackson, and we have Clelin Ferrell. You're right. There's some things that need to happen there. I do think they can still potentially bring in Jordan Willis. That would give them 4. I mean, but they do have to bring in some more guys. I think they're going to want to bring in some low-cost guys, do free agency, so that way they don't have to worry about counting on draft picks and not knowing who's going to be available when you make picks. If the 49ers go into the draft with 3 edge guys, they're walking away with 3 more in this draft. You could definitely do that. You could go Isaiah McGuire. You could go Thomas and Kuhn. You can go Carl Brooks. There are guys. You could go Harrison that I like a lot because of the elite traits and length. There's a ton of guys in this draft that you can go with in the edge rush department. I just didn't think they wanted to, go into the draft needing that many guys. I mean, potentially coming out of it, there could still be players available you could bring in, but then they kind of have a little bit of an idea of what you need. Let's see. Paul's loving it. BV says, "Ant, good job dissecting my butchered question." No, you did just fine, BV. Sometimes it gets us. The questions are hard. It's hard for me to read some of these. Sometimes it's nothing on anyone else. How about them Niners? Says, "I want Justin Houston on the 49ers. Not too expensive. 9.5 season. Good mentor for Jackson." I would love that. I think Justin Houston is exactly what the 49ers should want in a rotational piece. The physicality that he's able to play with. He's still got a lot of speed, but he's got strength combination. He could set the run or set the edge against the run. To me, he's a solid pickup. Spotrac has him at just over $3 million value. To me, that's elite value for a 9.5 sack guy, but because of age. But I would also love him working with potential guys the 49ers could bring in the draft. I know the 49ers got Darryl Tapp. I know the 49ers got, Chris Kasarik, but there's something about having players in front of you. I know you're going to have Nick Bosa doing it, but just a different thought process. It's never hurt to have, more than one guy potentially, helping you learn. And I think he would do a very good job. I would love him to be able to work with like Thomas O'Kuhn and Kuhn or somebody like that if the 49ers were able to do it. Because I really like him. I like Zach Harrison. I like Kuhn. Those are 2 of my favorite guys right now that I've watched. I've watched Felix and Ndike Uzama. I think Jay Aguayo was telling me to watch that. I watched him. He's fantastic. There's no way he makes it to the 49ers comp 3rd round pick. There's just no way. And then when I'm watching like Carl Brooks, I see a guy that I know he's 6'4", 303. I don't see him as an edge for the 49ers, but as a very impactful 3-tech. So I would move him in. His athletic ability would be tremendous on the inside. I think that he would be somebody I would definitely be interested in seeing move and play inside. So I think there's a lot of guys that 49ers can get to play outside, and some of them that could possibly float inside because of the way the 49ers play defensive line, which includes playing guys on the inside that are normally on the edge. So I think that's something to remember. What's up, Freddie McDre in the house? Thank you so much, Freddie McDre, for being a member. I really appreciate it so much. That's big time. So thanks so much to Freddie McDre for doing that. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of guys out there that are getting it done, and I like kind of the draft and the way that some of these players could be fitting in, and I think that's what's really nice. And another thing that I really liked that the 49ers did, and we didn't really talk about it a whole lot, but it was something that I was a huge fan of, was Isaiah Oliver, and it kind of will fly under the radar as far as as a move by the 49ers, but it's really sneaky good. So this is a guy that was highly touted in the 2018 draft, and a lot of people thought he was a 1st round guy, but he fits what the 49ers do. He's going to probably play the nickel. He's one of the better guys, at playing against the run, and I think that's something that the 49ers really need, is a guy that can play in that area but still be able to play against the run. So I'm excited about what he adds to this football team. And I think the 49ers are getting a very solid player in their secondary. And they just continue to make these smart, shrewd moves the 2-year deal for Oliver, so he's going to be coming in. But now he comes in and competes with Sam Womack for that nickel job, or where you had concerns about Sam Womack playing the run in year one. That's why they started playing him outside more. De'Amara Lenore is a guy that can play inside, but now you have 3 really good run stoppers at the cornerback position, and that's how you force 3rd and longs, by having cornerbacks that are willing to step up and make plays. To me, it's been a really, really solid offseason so far. Oliver played 262 of his 426 snaps in the slot last year, and he's a year removed from having an ACL injury. So he missed most of 2021 with a ACL injury. Once he got back in October, he played snaps, very significant snaps. He had an interception against the 49ers all year, or last year, but he's a guy that's had a lot of ability, and I think the 49ers got themselves a nice young player that can make plays in the secondary, and they continue to add where you wouldn't normally think it. So we got, let me see what we got here. BV says, and how's Alex doing? Will he be back with us? Alex is doing good. He got married. He's been coaching basketball after he got his new high school coaching or teaching gig. He started coaching basketball. He did that. They went all the way to the NorCal championships. They lost there, and now he's moving again. So Alex is very busy. I don't know what the future holds as far as Alex being back here. But I mean, me and him are in contact. He's going to be in my wedding that I have coming up, so we'll have that going down. And but I think, yeah, I mean, Alex is doing good though. Trickster says, and Robbie lives in a hotel. He's from Chicago, gonna cost a lot. He deserves it, but probably just a good time to move on. It could be. The one thing with Robbie Gould that he has said, though, he wants to win the Super Bowl and he wants to go to the Hall of Fame. I don't think you're going to a Super Bowl in Chicago. So I know his family lives there. Would he love to be closer? I'm sure he would. But to me, the 49ers are still an option. But you're right, it's going to cost. What's up, Gary? How's it going? Matt Burgos, hi, Ant. Long-time listener, first-time caller. What date are you more excited about, April 27th or April 15th? And Matt is trying to get me in trouble. April 27th being the draft, April 15th being my wedding date. So, of course, my wedding date. Come on now, Matt. I'm not getting in trouble. I'm not going down this road. But I like the question overall. It's solid. Very solid coming from that. Brad just says, what if Zadarius Smith gets released from the Vikings? I'm in it. I mean, if Zadarius Smith gets released, he's my first call. I want to get him to the 49ers. I think he fits perfectly opposite of Nick Bosa. The things you could do with a line that consists of Bosa, Zadarius Smith, Javon Hargrave, and Eric Armstead is ridiculous. Talk about closing time on third down. All those guys have the ability to get home. All those guys have had double-digit sacks in a season. To me, it could be absolutely spectacular. But he has to get released first. So far, they've said they're not going to release him. They signed Marcus Davenport, but it appears that they signed him to rush opposite of Zadarius Smith. We'll see, though. Zadarius Smith still has his house up for sale, so we'll see how that works out. Geez. It's just one of those things. They're going to continue to work on it. So it's fun. It's fun to see how the 49ers are building the roster. But you're right. Tons of edge rushers are still out there. And Zadarius Smith could potentially be added to that, that lineup. If he is, I mean, it just adds an already, to an already saturated, group. When you look at it, offensive tackles have went at a pretty high level. There has been a lot of the guys who have went, as edge guys. I mean, one of the guys that I wanted the 49ers to bring in was Morgan Fox from the Chargers, but he re-upped there. I thought he was going to be a low-cost guy that could be very effective for the 49ers, but he had 6.5 sacks last year, so I really liked him, but he went back. So now it's starting to find other guys, but, listening to the value of other players, and I don't know does anyone know if J.J. Watt decided he was coming back? Because all of a sudden I'm on Spotrac and they just added J.J. Watt and he hasn't been on here the entire time. So I don't know if anyone knows if he said he was coming back or not. But Frank Clark, Robert Quinn, Yannick Ngakoue, who most 49er fans have been very in on, Jordan Elliott, Splash Cousins' favorite, Jadeveon Clowney, Matt Ioannidis, who played for Carolina last year. I've heard a lot about him. Calais Campbell, who got released. Potentially he's still out there. Justin Houston, who we talked about earlier. Carlos Dunlap, who's been around, was on the Kansas City Chiefs last year, 34 years old. Dante Fowler, been around, but was with Dallas last year, did pretty good. I know Trey Flowers is visiting. Kerry Hyder could still come back to the 49ers. Jason Pierre-Paul was with Baltimore last year. He's available. I mean, there is a lot of players that are still out there that are available, including Jordan Willis. I mean, it's definitely more picked over, but when you look at those, top names, they're still big time. I mean, those first 5 or 6 names are big time players that can make an impact for you, especially if you want a speed rush guy. So we'll see what the 49ers do on the edge rush angle. I think it's going to be a free agent at some point. I don't know if it'll be a high cost one. I think if they could get one of those big time guys, then you might as well go do it. Brad says Bob Tonyan just signed with the Bears. Thought he might have been a cheap option, but clearly Niners are drafting a couple tight ends in the draft. Yeah, I thought he was going to be an option as well. I saw Saubert. He was another guy that when I did my tight end video, I thought he was an option for the 49ers coming over from Denver. He went to Miami, so you see the scheme fit. He was able to move over there. Last year played for Nathaniel Hackett. So Mike McDaniel moving on from Gesicki and bringing in tight ends that fit his scheme that are more, dual threats, pass as far as catching balls and blocking. Are they big-time names? No, but they're pretty good. What's up, Michael? How's it going? Michael Humphrey in the house says, Ant, if you could have any 49ers player or coach attending your wedding, who would it be? That's a good question. I just think that as far as fun-wise, you would have to lean towards George Kittle, right? I mean, the dude's just a blast, a lot of fun. I think him and Claire would just be a blast to be around. So I think that would be that. But I like a lot of the different groups now. Like I like Fred Warner. I think Warner would be a lot of fun. To me, those guys would be awesome. And if you just want to get yelled at, right? Chris Kasarik. Let's get yelled at. Let's have Chris Kasarik come to the house. If he was still alive, I would have went with Bill Walsh. And if we're talking about legend, I would love to, have somebody like Joe Montana or Roger Craig or one of those guys. So that would be a lot of fun. But that was a good question overall. But yeah, I mean, Kittle, Warner, I don't think you could go wrong with those. I mean, since I'm sporting, maybe Sam Darnold. I don't know. I'm already, feeling Darnold. But no, I mean, I really do like a lot of the players that the 49ers have. I think there's a lot of really good guys. So, I think that those would be a couple. BV says, early congratulations, Ant. Thanks. I really appreciate it. And then Brad says the J.J. Watt news is that the Cardinals officially released him. Okay. Now it makes sense why he got put on the list. I did see that he's officially put as inactive. Kelly says, when the Niners sign a former Panther, Matt Ioannidis, when will they? It could be. Let's see what his money ends up looking like. I don't know. Ioannidis would be a huge addition to the 49ers. And I think at that point, you start asking questions about Kinlaw. I know he's $4.9 million against the cap, and I expect him to be a part of this roster, but where does he fit as far as that goes? So I think that's one thing to remember. Eric says, get Dalton Schultz, run 2 tight end sets. I wouldn't be against it. I really wouldn't. I think that the 49ers definitely like running the 2 tight end sets. And when you have Christian McCaffrey, it allows you the opportunity to do so because you can still have huge mismatches by keeping them in their base 4-3, but then putting Christian McCaffrey lined up on linebackers. You want to be in those tight end sets. So Robert Tonyan got the 1-year deal today. He was somebody that I thought the Niners could potentially get. Also, Eric Saubert, I thought he was potential. He went to Miami on a $1.65 million deal. So the guy's still available who kind of fit the bill for what the 49ers are looking for. Like you said, Dalton Schultz. But what's Dalton Schultz's market value? I bet it's pretty ridiculous. I don't think the 49ers would pay big for a tight end. I think it has to be like decent to average money. The market value for Dalton Schultz is $5.191 million. The 49ers are not paying $15.1 million for Dalton Schultz. Austin Hooper is a name that I've started to hear people talk about as a potential option for the 49ers. But Hooper is set to make $6.7 million. If they could talk him into taking $5 million or below, I think that would be something the 49ers would be willing to do. Hooper, somebody that Kyle Shanahan has been interested before. He's a Stanford guy, so John Lynch would like it. To me, Austin Hooper would make some sense depending on money. I brought up Dan Arnold before. He was in Jacksonville last year, but he's been with Arizona. He's still got some skills. I think he's an option. Irv Smith, we've heard about. I mean, he's a young guy. I expect Irv Smith to still get a big contract once everything kind of, works out, but he's expected to make double digits. Not an option for the 49ers. They're not paying someone over $10 million when they already have George Kittle. So who else would be available? A O.J. Howard, I think, would make sense for the 49ers. He did pretty good last year. I think he's somebody they could go with. So, I mean, there are guys that are available that the 49ers could go. Drew Sample, another guy the 49ers could be interested in. Jordan Akins, who I did some stuff about in the tight end video. You guys can go back and check that out about tight ends who the 49ers could be interested in. I think those are some names. We've seen guys already go off the market, but the 49ers are definitely in the tight end market, not just in free agency, though, but in the draft, like was brought up. I think the 49ers are going to go with a draft pick, maybe two. Who will it be that they end up getting, in that category? I think that's a bigger question. There's going to be very, very good players available for the 49ers when they draft at the end of the third round with those comp picks. I think there'll be still some very solid tight ends there. I don't think Sam Laporta will be there anymore after his great combine, but Luke Schoonmaker could potentially be there. I look for him to go in the third round. Will Mallory, who's one of my star players, I need to do a star player report on him, was the fastest tight end at the combine. He's somebody that I like a lot, that I think can make an impact for the 49ers early. Of course, a lot of people have talked about Zach Kuntz. I think physically he's imposing with his size, 6'7", 255. He's fast, but needs a lot of development in the pass blocking game. So he's a guy, potentially the 49ers could target. Brenton Strange has looked pretty good from everything that I saw. And then one of my under-the-radar guys, Blake Whiteheart, out of Wake Forest, 6'4", 247 pounds. To me, that's another guy that I like. So Blake Whiteheart is another guy to keep an eye on and that the 49ers could be interested in the draft. So plenty of potential at tight end in the draft for the 49ers. Let's see. Sorry, chat jumped on me while I was talking. Jose, how's it going? Jose Alvarado says, Ant, what do you think of Cameron Fleming? He can play swing tackle. Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I think the 49ers will look to bring in some veterans at some point along the offensive line. It's usually guys who Kyle Shanahan's familiar with, but they could go with a guy like that to be able to play each way. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Orktal says, Ant, what do you think about Schoonmaker tight end from Michigan? That would be a good possibility. Yeah, so you brought it up the other day. I got into the film on him. I like him a lot. I thought that I could easily give him a third-round grade. Late 2, early 3. To me, Schoonmaker makes a lot of sense. He's pretty athletic. I liked his blocking ability. Good catcher of the football. Pretty good routes. I think the one thing that really was noticeable for me, though, was he went down a little bit easier than I anticipated. I thought he was going to be a little bit tougher to bring down, but you could definitely get better at that. So, I mean, yeah, I like him, especially in that third-round range. If he was sitting there for the 49ers in their comp picks, I wouldn't hesitate to make a move like that. If you could walk away in the draft with a Schoonmaker and a Will Mallory or Zach Kuntz, I would be all about it. So, to me, he's a guy that's definitely in that market that I like. I liked his overall skill set. And the ability you could put in with Kittle, I think it would be nice. And that's what you said earlier, right? Schoonmaker would pair nice with Kittle. I think so. I'm looking for guys who are balanced at the tight end position. Make you think, hey, are they going to run? Or are they going to pass? We can do both. And I like that about him. I think he's one of those guys that you don't know what you're going to get out of him. He could run, he could pass. So to me, I like it a lot. But I think, yeah, Hurricane tight end, huh? Yeah, I know. It's not like I look at the team, you know what I mean? I would love for it to be a guy that, that comes out of Florida State, but I haven't seen the guy. And then when you're talking about Purdue's tight end, Payne Durham, I think the only question mark with him is he's a lot slower. So I know he has a pretty good release off the ball, but as far as being able to separate against linebackers and safeties in the NFL, he's going to have to use his 6'6" body to be able to do it because he just can't run as fast as everyone else. I mean, Mallory ran a 4.5, Kuntz ran a 4.5, and Payne Durham ran almost a 4.9. The difference between the two guys is pretty drastic. So I think that's something he could work on, but if he can body players, it's definitely something he could do. Yeah, Knowles are going to be fun to watch, JLE, for sure. BV says, Ant, how about Noah Fant, Seattle tight end? Is he available? I mean, I don't think he's available right now. If Noah Fant was available, I mean, 100%, I'd be willing to get Noah Fant. But I think he's under contract, and if he ever became not under contract for the Seattle Seahawks, I would be all over that. To me, Noah Fant would be a tremendous player for the 49ers, a lot better in the pass catching department than the blocking department. But when you have a guy like Charlie Warner, you could potentially, figure it out. I do think the 49ers have been trying to locate tight ends that fit the system to be able to run more play action, where it's believable that those guys are going to stay in and block, but can also go out and catch the ball. So I think either way, that's what you're looking for. But right now in the draft, there are tight ends, and this is a heavy tight end draft. I think the 49ers should and could take 2 tight ends in this draft. And most of the mock drafts I do have 2 tight ends. So I think that's something I'm looking forward to doing. I'm going to start doing some mock drafts here and there. So if you get notifications about that, I'm going to get into those, have fun talking about, the draft picks and some of the players that I've been breaking down. I definitely haven't got the full depth and scope of all these guys to like to do in-depth breakdowns, but I'm starting to get an idea. And when people bring them up in chat and I go watch them, and it's fun because I think sometimes people get really hyped about certain players, especially coming out of the combine with their testing. Then you go back and you watch their video and you're like, hey, does that translate? Because when it comes down to it don't matter how fast you run, how many bench press reps you do. If it don't show up on film, it just don't matter. Workout warriors don't get it done in the league. And I see some technique flaws in some of the guys. And then some guys, you're like, hey, you know what? They have technique flaws, but they have these elite traits and they can definitely figure out how to do these technique things. And the 49ers have good coaching staff. So sometimes you're just looking for things that are elite and let the coaches coach them up a little bit. Brad says, couple videos coming out today. The new signings arriving, being greeted by Debo and Fred, Kyle and John welcoming them. Kyle's hug for Sam, at least 3 Mississippis. Oh, I like that. I like that you counted it out and broke it all down. 3 Mississippis. I'm going to have to check these out. I haven't watched the pressers yet. I saw that they were doing the pressers, but I want to sit back and watch them and kind of get some information on them. But I'm definitely interested in getting into that. That'll be a lot of fun for sure. JL says, surprised that Irv Smith isn't signed yet, or is he? No, he's not signed yet. So they haven't really moved. Any of these big-time tight ends have not been moved yet. I mean, the tight ends, if you want to look at the guys who have been signed, so the tight ends who have been signed, Hayden Hurst, who just got done, he got about $7.2 million per year. Josh Oliver, a young guy, he's going to Minnesota. He was one of the best blocking tight ends in the entire league. He got $7 million a year. Chris Manhertz got $3 million a year. Eric Sauber got 1.685, and we don't know what Tanyan or Ben Elefson got yet. Those ones still haven't came down. So 1, 2, 3, 6 tight ends have signed so far. The big time tight ends haven't. Gesicki, Schultz, Hooper, all those guys are still available. Mercedes Lewis, who I guess after the Jets officially get the Aaron Rodgers deal done, he could be headed there. Kyle Rudolph, a little bit older now, he's out there. So I think that Irv Smith is one of those big time names who hasn't went yet. So I mean, there's still guys out there that are available. Another guy interesting, the 49ers could be interested in someone like Max Williams, even though he's had some injuries. But I mean, Jordan Akins and OJ Howard, both guys from the Titans, I'd be interested in bringing them in if I was the 49ers. And then Zach Gentry, if you want a guy who's young, 26 years old, who can block like the Dickens. I mean, he's a guy I like. He's more of a possession receiver, but he's a guy I definitely like. And if he's your third tight end, and you've got somebody else, that you drafted, or somebody you brought in for $5 or $6 million, like Austin Hooper, I think your tight end room is set and kicking and ready to roll. Yeah, so I like it. D. Will says Kittle got a great contract. He did. I mean, Kittle's got a great contract that the 49ers aren't going to, need to do anything from. They could potentially restructure him. Let's see if they do that. Let's see if they end up restructuring him. But I don't know for sure. I really don't. And so I'm excited to see, what he is going to do and how he improves. A lot of people thought Kittle was falling off, but Kittle did not fall off. He had himself a great year. A lot of that, though, I mean, you got to give credit to the young quarterback, Brock Purdy. He did a very, very good job. And KNDR comes through with nice Darnold jersey, Ant. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I got it, I mean, just in time, right, for his press conference. You have to know people to be able to get a Sam Darnold 49er jersey that fast. You just, I mean, got to do it. JLE says options galore at the tight end room. There is all kinds. Brad says, and Oren Burks working out with Kittle at Kittle's house. He's going to get bigger. He's going to get faster. He's going to get stronger. Oren Burks, I think, is going to be touted with the third linebacker spot. And I thought he looked pretty good last year. I think the 49ers brought him in under a 2-year contract with the thought being that he was going to help on special teams and Azeez was going to leave and they were going to need somebody to step up. And now they have him and they re-signed Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles. So Fowles will be back and competing, but that room is stacked again. I know you lose Azeez and so you're just not as good with the top 3, but the step back is what? We haven't seen Burks play a good amount. He could end up being as good as Azeez. So they've got Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, and then they've got Oren Burks. They got Curtis Robinson, who they were high enough last year on that they didn't want to lose, that they put him on their 53-man roster before week 1. So that was impressive. You got Flannigan-Fowles, who's learned in this system, and Coach Hollins has really coached him up. He's done a pretty good job. We've heard all about McCrary Ball. Marcelino McCrary Ball, tons of 49er fans and content creators are hugely high on him. I think he ends up being a special teams guy who will be the first kind of sub in. But you've got another stacked group, a little bit younger now, with Robinson, McCrary, Ball, and then you have Flannigan-Fowles competing with Oren Burks. But I think Burks is going to be that guy that plays the third linebacker spot. So absolutely, fantastic group overall. I'm excited about who the 49ers have in the building, and I'm excited about who they continue to bring in. It's just smart, shrewd moves. These things don't get you going crazy. Chase McLaughlin returns to the 49ers, question marks. I don't know. I think that all depends on what they decide to do with Robbie Gould. And I think, I think the 49ers got to be concerned, and I know I would be concerned. I would be concerned if you got to the NFC Championship game, and you're lining up to kick a field goal to win, and it's not a veteran that you have confidence in. If it's not Robbie Gould or one of those guys, and there's some guys available, and Chase McLaughlin is definitely a young guy that's available. He's only 26 years old, so I mean they could go that route. He had a lot of success. I mean, but his number $4.1 million is probably pretty close to what you're going to be paying Robbie Gould. Why not bring back the kicker? I know he's 40 years old. I know he doesn't have the length on his kicks on kickoffs or in field goals that you're used to. But when it comes to playoff time, he does not miss. Literally does not miss. I don't know if you can walk away from that. But the other kickers available, the 49ers could be interested in, of course, Mason Crosby from Green Bay. He's kicked in every situation. He's been really good. Randy Bullock from Tennessee, 33 years old. Steer clear of Brett Maher with the extra point problems last year. And then I think the last guy, Eddie Pinheiro from Carolina, just because of the connection with Steve Wilks, 27 years old. I think it comes down to Gould, though. I think the 49ers want to bring Gould back. I think if it wasn't Gould after that, I think I'd be trying to bring back Mason Crosby. Because I would have been all in on guys like Matt Gay or Greg Zuerlein, but I wasn't going to pay Matt Gay what he got, $5.6 million. That probably put Robbie Gould wanting close to $5 million. But you can't pay a kicker $5 million. $4 million for Robbie Gould? Maybe. Even then it's tough, but you just don't want to get into those situations where you're doing that. Just scary to pay a kicker that much and missing out on another player. Fructal says, I'm glad Foles returned. Fowles, hard to believe since he wasn't tendered at all. He will help big time for the special teams. Yeah, he wasn't tendered because they're bringing him back on a cheaper deal. So they weren't able to reach an agreement with him before the start of the official league year. They did with Kevin Givens. They did with Holden McKivitz. They weren't able to foul, so they had to release him. So that way they didn't have to tender him a contract that was going to pay him more than what they felt it was worth. But then he negotiates with the 49ers, and he's going to come in on a pretty cheap deal. And I think that's great. What's up, Mr. Corey? How's it going? Great one in the house as well, says Panero. Yeah, no, I've actually heard people, pushing Panero pretty good. Could be a problem. Mr. Corey says Ward and Emmanuel Mosley. It was sad. I think it's sad every year when we see these players, that we've kind of come accustomed to really cheering for. Someone like Jimmy Ward, been around since 2014, but at some point, right, you have to move on. They price themselves out, or you get a young player at another position that you just can't afford to lose, and then you have to do it. And with Jimmy Ward, he wanted to play safety. He wasn't going to play safety for the 49ers, so he took similar money to go to the Texans and play safety. I can't hate on him for doing that and doing what he felt was right for him and his family, but it will be different not seeing Jimmy Ward's number one out there this season for sure. And I did not want to lose Emmanuel Mosley. Mike, what's up? Mike says we need to keep good as gold. I'm with you. Great one. I'm doing great. I hope you're doing good as well. Brad Jones says, what about Eddie Panero for kicker? Yeah, I think he's a possibility. We'll see if they end up signing him. BB50 says, Ant, do you see open competition for starting quarterback? You know what? From the beginning, I didn't see it because I just don't think Brock Purdy is going to be available and ready to compete during training camp. So I think it's going to be geared more towards Trey Lance. I think that, when it comes to the quarterback situation, I do think they have some guys now that are available. With Sam Darnold, I mean, he's very talented. It's not like he's void of talent. I haven't been as open as saying, Sam Darnold can compete for the starting job, but I mean, without knowing the health of Trey Lance and the health of Brock Purdy, I think it's at least within reason that Sam Darnold could potentially start some games for the 49ers. But I think everything within them wants Trey Lance to be the starting quarterback until Brock Purdy's ready to go, and then we'll see where they're really at with it. But, Brock Purdy won 7 games for the 49ers. He won 2 playoff games. I don't think that can be ignored. But it also can't be ignored that, Trey Lance is a tremendous talent and has got a lot of ability, and if he continues to improve, it could be hard. Jose says, should the Niners sign Anthony Brown or Greedy Williams? I mean, I like Greedy Williams a lot. I think Greedy's got a tremendous amount of talent. He fits the 49ers system as far as change of direction and things. If he was willing to come in for a very cheap deal, a 1-year veteran prove-it deal, then I think the 49ers would be, probably very excited to bring him in and letting him compete, because I don't think it's set at the end of the depth chart. I don't think they're sold on Ambry Thomas right now, even though he was an Adam Peters guy. I don't think they're really set on it. So I do think there is room for growth there, whether it's a cheap veteran, potentially like a Greedy Williams or Anthony Brown, or a guy, that they could bring in, in the draft. So I think they're going to make a couple moves here. Jay Ellie says, how is he worth $4.1 million? Contracts weren't over $2 million. Offer him 2 years, $2.4 million, and call it. It could be. Yeah, I don't know why Spotrac put him at, $4.1 million, but that's exactly where they did for sure. A great one says we need to address that right tackle. Oli Oda. I'm sorry. I know I'm saying that name wrong. Would be a good replacement. I'm not exactly too familiar with the player that you were mentioning. So I'd have to really look at it, but I'm not sure the 49ers are going to be willing to pay a good amount for a right tackle. They haven't been willing so far. They seem to be willing to go with Colton McKivitz. I think this reminds me of a lot of last year when Laken Tomlinson left. It was the thought that, oh no, we need to get somebody that can play left guard. And then, Aaron Banks stepped in and played at a high level. And they're very high on Colton McKivitz. And I know we haven't seen it at a high level yet. So there's a lot of unknown there. I just don't know, who they'll be willing to bring in. I think there's guys. There's a couple guys here and there they could bring in. Fant, potentially. We'll see. Mike says Trey is quarterback 1. I think he is right now for sure. I think he's going to go in through all the OTAs, the training camp, everything. He's going to be quarterback 1. I think that's the intention of the organization right now, especially with the unknowns about Brock Purdy. I think the only thing that helps, Sam Darnold get into that starting lineup is if Trey really struggles or if the injury is not fully healed. But other than that, I think they're going to let Trey get his opportunity and see how he does. I think it's smart to have a player like Sam Darnold that could step in if Trey was to get hurt or, just had some struggles. I think the 49ers would let him work through a lot of those struggles. But, let's say Brock was going to miss the first 8 games and you get through the first 4 and the 49ers are 1-3. then at least you have a potential to go to a guy that's extremely talented. And I think we'll see how Sam Darnold looks in training camp. Right now, we have no idea what he'll look like in this 49ers scheme, and working with Brian Griese and Clay Kubiak. So I think there's a lot of unknowns there. Less unknowns with Sam Darnold as far as in the NFL than Trey, but Trey's got such a tremendous upside. I can't see the 49ers not going in with him being considered number one quarterback through OTA's training camp and probably the preseason, because we don't know when Brock's going to be back and ready to go. Great one says, Udo is right tackle for the Vikings. He will come cheap. He is a swing tackle. Okay, I'm going to look him up. So thank you for that. Great one. I really appreciate that. And I agree with you. I think that Purdy could start the season on the IR or the PUP list. I think those are definitely possibilities. So to me, that makes a lot of sense for sure. So yeah, I'll go in and check this right tackle out and see what I think. And I appreciate everyone that, gives me guys like that to look up. I love it. I just love, looking at more players I haven't heard about, that I haven't considered yet for the 49ers. So thank you for that. Great one. And guys, I've been on for an hour. I'm going to hop off. Thank you guys all so much. What a great chat it was, talking 49ers free agency. Looking forward to doing it again. And we'll be doing mock draft 1.0 for Ant here pretty soon. I'll let you guys all know when it's coming. But until then, stay safe and remember the right way is always the 49ers way.